I like to read stories about my bad shows because nobody wants to hear stories about good shows. And I have had good shows, by the way. I had some very, I had life-changing shows, but nobody wants to hear about that. There's a story about two comics are talking, and the first one says, "Did you hear I opened for Taylor Swift at Carnegie Hall?" And the other comic says, "No, I didn't hear about that." And the first comic says, "Did you hear I got invited to perform at the White House?" And the other comic says, "No, I didn't hear about that." The first comic says, "Did you hear I got booed off the stage in Kalispell, Montana?" And the other comic says, "Yeah, I heard about that." The same two comics. The first one says, "Oh man, I had a tough show last week. I was in this little bar and I had to open for a rock band, and the audience started booing and yelling, 'Get off the stage, you suck.' And they were throwing beer bottles at me. And one of them hit me on the side of the head. It was a tough room." The other comic says, "How much does it pay?" See, that's a joke. And that same two comics, okay, now I'm not telling any more of these jokes. I had a really bad show years and years ago. And all my bad shows are from years and years ago because I haven't had a bad show in a long time. And I was in this comedy club in Portland, Oregon, and the audience wasn't laughing at my jokes, and I was nervous, and they could tell I was nervous. And I always look a little nervous, but this time I really was nervous. And as I finished my show, I stepped off the stage and I tripped, and my chest landed on the front table, and my arms were spread out, and I knocked the drinks into the laps of 5 people sitting at the table. And then I just rolled off the table, I fell on the floor, and I was so humiliated I crawled out of the room on my hands and knees. And that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was I was the MC and I had to go back on stage again after the next act. But I learned an important thing from that show. I learned if I'd have known how bad the show would have been, and I asked myself over and over, what could I do different? If I knew it was going to be a bad show, what could I do different? And I realized if I knew how bad the show would have been, I'd have just made up my mind to have fun. Even if the audience wasn't having fun, I'd have just had a good time. I'd have said, "You guys paid to see this. I'm glad I didn't pay to see this. I just hope I get paid for this." And the thing is, no matter how bad a show is, if you can have fun, then the audience can have fun. And that is the trick to having a good show every time. It's a pretty good trick.